This right here is the Insta360 1RS camera co-engineered with Leica. It can replicate gimbal-like shots, fake drone shots, shoot real estate videos and photos, be a BTS camera for you, capture fun family moments, and even do epic star lapses. Along with that, it comes with its own powerful editing suite that's really easy to reframe and streamline the editing process, but you can also utilize the app to control it, view the stuff you shot, and instantly share it. So I've gotten to use this and test it out the last couple of weeks, so let's dive into its main features and how I'm probably gonna be utilizing this in my real estate media business. Let's get into it. So I do wanna let you guys know that Insta360 did send this to me, but they're not sponsoring this video or anything like that. All of the feedback is just my real world experience and honest thoughts utilizing it. So first, let's talk about the camera and general specs. First off, it's just such an interesting camera. It's so different from something like this. The footage you create with this is pretty incredible. Like the fact that this is a whole modular system. It's not just one piece. Struggling here. This comes off. This comes off. This comes off. It features dual 1-inch CMOS sensors. Then you have the main body part right here with a really nice touchscreen where your micro SD card goes, and then the battery, which is of course USB-C. Then you build this whole thing back together. And you're good to go. So right off the bat, the biggest feature about this camera is it can do 6K 30 frames per second, and you can reframe your shots afterwards. Which is honestly the main reason you would get something like this, because you don't have to worry about composition. If you're getting the right perspective, you just shoot it first from whatever point of view you want and then reframe the shot later in the editing suite. Honestly, the possibilities are completely endless. And then it also can do 21 megapixel raw photos, HDR photo bracketing like I do for real estate, and it has flow state stabilization to make sure you're getting really smooth shots whenever you're doing these crazy types of first-person view or gimbal-like shots. Whatever you're doing, it's gonna be pretty smooth. So now let's dive into the video. So I know 6K sounds like it's really high quality, but it still is, but you have to remember that it's 360 video, meaning that it's capturing, everything around it. So that resolution doesn't appear like, super high resolution 6K out of like a cinema camera. Just one thing to note. But for this really small 1-inch sensor, it's really nice, and honestly, plenty. So like I said, whenever you're filming with this, you can literally point it whatever direction you want and just reframe it later. Whether you hold it out in front of you, whether it's above you, below you, you don't have to worry about like, is this lens pointing at me? Is this lens pointing at the subject? You can just fix it in editing, not necessarily fix it, reframe the shot to do whatever you want. So what I was really interested in testing out was what kind of real estate video could I shoot with this? So they also sent me the invisible selfie stick, which is really awesome. Basically, whenever you're shooting with this, it disappears. All I did was hold it out in front of me, walk through the property, and reframe it later, and it worked out pretty well. If I were to do it again, I kind of learned a lot more this time around, and I would have done a couple of things smoother because it only is 30 frames per second. So it's not like you can slow it down like you would 60 frames per second. So just keep that in mind to walk a little bit slower. Otherwise it's gonna be kind of fast. Took no time to do that. Easily reframe it in the video editing suite, and it was really easy. Either add-on you could do to your business, or if you're wanting to get into shooting real estate videos but you don't have like a camera, lens, gimbal setup, this could be a really affordable, easy option. I also found myself whenever I was using it outdoors and other settings to use the auto mode. Typically I don't do that, but because lighting is fluctuating so much, especially from room to room or from scene to scene, and because it's capturing not just, the front shot, but everything around it, it's really hard to get exposure correct for one setting and then jump to another one and still be that same exposure. So I did feel like just using auto mode for video was a lot better. Again, unless you were specifically shooting just like one spot, then cutting it, then going to another spot, then for sure use manual video settings. And then I also found myself that standard color profile worked best in this. The log profile is flat, offers a little bit more dynamic range, but it can fall apart pretty easily. And the vivid was way too saturated. You could do that in post. So standard was a pretty good in between that I would stick to, especially because it kind of reminded me of like the standard color profile in drones, where it's pretty flat and you can still manipulate it a little bit. So not only could you do real estate video tours with this, but it's a great BTS camera if you wanted to use that to showcase parts of your business. You know, one of the things I've actually found a lot of value out of is whenever I post behind the scenes of me at a listing or working or whatever, potential clients reach out. Maybe they just find that interesting and just kind of see that perspective and they're like, hey, I want to work with this guy. It's really easy because you could just set this up somewhere just like that and, you know, hit record and then just do whatever you need to do and reframe it later and have like a BTS video of you. Or when I was one-wheeling, that was so much fun because the shots you can get are endless. And kind of like in this one shot where I'm pulling up to my car, I had it sitting on the, you know, this tripod, and I just reframed it later, and it just was like a full little camera tracking me every movement I did, which would be not really possible unless I just had my phone shooting like one perspective. But in this case, it literally tracked my whole movement. So it's a really great addition for just that type of work as well. So now let's talk about the photography you can do with this. Of course, you can do 360 photos. So the first thing I wanted to do when I was at that listing was test out the 360 photos and see what kind of perspectives I could get. So I placed it in the middle of the room on the tripod and I ducked around the corner. So I used the HDR photo feature that enables auto exposure bracketing, which is really nice. That's how we shoot our listings. We shoot our listings with 3 to 5 brackets, but this can do up to 9 brackets, which is pretty crazy because it merges it for you. When you do that, you're gonna get a really dynamic image from the brightest parts of the window to the darkest parts of your shadows, and it's gonna look really good. And because of the fact you can just reframe it once you're back in editing, you can pretty much get whatever perspective. And honestly, if you're wanting to get into real estate photography and you don't have like a photo lens and all of that stuff, you could invest in this, you know, set it up, take the photos, reframe it later and export it, and it looks pretty good. It's a really dynamic image, and I don't think some people are gonna be like, oh, that's, you know, lower quality compared to a professional camera. Like, you could totally get away with it, especially if you switch it to the natural view, so it's not like the fisheye look and all your lines are gonna be straight. I think you could totally use this for real estate photography and videos like I mentioned before. But the biggest thing about 360 photos is obviously virtual tours. One of the things that I'm really excited to test out, which I'm gonna make a separate video on, is now you can actually utilize this for Matterport tours. It's one of the things I still don't offer in my business because I really am pushing the video more, and honestly, too many agents don't ask about it. Having that as a service that I can now offer is gonna be pretty good because just like Matterport, you would just pop this in, set it, and move it from room to room, and you can pair it with the Matterport app and create 3D virtual tours. So that's gonna be pretty awesome to test out. But like I said, that's gonna be a separate video because I haven't dove into that completely yet. But looking at the 360 photos and scrubbing around in the editing suite looks like it's gonna be really promising. And if you wanna just take regular photos, you get 21 megapixel raw DNG files, which are pretty great because you can bring them into Lightroom. Just turned off. You can bring them into Lightroom, you know, edit them like you would photos from your camera, and it's gonna look pretty good. So now let's talk about what it's like editing the footage out of this camera. So you get access to the Insta360 Studio whenever you get one of these cameras, and it's actually really nice. You know, I really didn't think I'd be utilizing it, especially because they have a Premiere Pro plugin and that's what I use, but I was kind of hesitant testing out a new program, but it's actually really nice. It works so well with the Insta360 footage. You literally drag and drop it into the studio and it reformats it for you, and you can preview everything and it doesn't lag. I viewed it on my laptop and the Mac Mini M2 Pro, and it works great. And I also did try the Premiere Pro plugin, but it was kind of difficult because, you know, classic Premiere, it lags a lot, and even on my really powerful Mac Mini M2, it was still lagging a bit whenever I would reframe the shot. So I would personally bring it into the studio, do the reframing where you can change the field of view, you can change the perspective, you can change the start and end of a shot. You can do all of that there and export it, then bring it into your editing program like Premiere or whatever, and that's probably gonna be a better workflow. You can export it in ProRes 422 so it retains the most detail and information, and then you can do further, you know, post color grading or whatever in your video editing program. So there was a couple of drawbacks I did notice while using this camera, and I think just the only main one that came to mind was simply it does struggle a little bit in low light scenarios, which makes sense. It's a 1-inch sensor, and so it's, you know, not as big as like your camera sensor, but if you have plenty of light, this thing shines really well, whether it's daylight or really bright interiors. Once you start bumping up the ISO, it does kind of get a little bit noisy, a little bit of detail gets lost. So if you were to shoot this somewhere in like a really dark home, that's where you could notice it falling apart. That's why I also don't really recommend using log and just shooting the standard color profile so it's already, ready to go. And then the only other thing was I would love to see 10-bit log profiles that would be much more flexible in this. That way you can either match other cameras, more dynamic range, but honestly, just the fact that you can do the other features like reframe everything and it's pretty good video is enough for me. Okay, so final thoughts. Honestly, this is a super fun and unique camera. You just can't beat the type of content you get out of this, whether it's for real estate, personal projects. Even if you're going traveling, this would be the first thing I would bring for sure. Any next trip, I'm gonna be bringing this because it's gonna be a really cool perspective to shoot in. And the fact that I'm probably gonna be utilizing it in my real estate media business is another big plus. So I think this is gonna be one of the new additions in my everyday carry, like I mentioned in my last video with what I'm carrying for 2023, because it's just a really versatile camera. And then especially if you're getting into real estate photo and video or wanting to do that, but maybe you feel like you don't have the necessary equipment and you still would have to invest in those things, honestly, think about this. This could be a really good start because it's like an all-in-one package where you can get started, eventually upgrade, but you could probably get, really good quality content and almost run a whole business based off of this. And just the fact of how fun this is. It's just such a refreshing piece of gear that I've gotten to use because everything else is pretty similar, whether it's like an upgraded model of this, a new lens, a new camera, they all do the same thing, but this is just pretty unique. Whenever I'm one-wheeling, this is probably gonna be the next thing I'm always gonna bring. And then along with the fact that you can also capture fun family moments, instantly view them in the app, change the aspect ratio, whatever you want, export it immediately. And the fact that you can do star lapses with this, I took this to my backyard and I got a really epic star lapse, a star time lapse, if you will, because that type of stuff fascinates me. So anything space and night star related is just like, I really love that stuff. And so having a built-in feature called star lapse that app just enables for you is really cool. And the results are crazy. Like I caught a meteor or a comet in that 5-second video. So if you're wanting to get into shooting real estate media or just a really different type of content, honestly, check out the Insta360 One RS in the link below. You'll also be supporting me and my channel through that affiliate link. So that's it for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, comment down your thoughts, subscribe if you haven't already. I would love for you guys to be part of the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.